Hey Pretty Girl Club. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the micro insecurities that I used to have when I centered men and how 90% of my insecurities went away once I decentered men. So let me explain. When I use the term micro insecurities, that's just a term that I made up because it's the only word that I can think of to describe this phenomenon where, for example, let's say I was going out to a bar and I'm wearing a skirt, but I noticed that I missed a spot on my legs when I was shaving my legs. That would be a micro insecurity that I would have. And the reason I would have that small insecurity is because I would be thinking in the back of my mind, oh my gosh, like what if a guy sees my leg and he's like, ew, she's hairy and disgusting, and then like he doesn't want to talk to me. So, a lot of these small thoughts that I used to have about myself when I was younger, I didn't realize at the time that all of those thoughts were revolving around the male gaze. Another one that I can think of is walking out of the house and I forgot to spray my body spray or my perfume on myself when I went somewhere. That was a micro insecurity because I would be like, oh my gosh, like, what if I'm around people? And by people, I meant guys. What if I'm around people and then they think, like, oh my gosh, she smells like outside. Oh, she doesn't smell good. Like, ew, she stinks. That was also based on the male gaze. Another micro insecurity that I used to have was about my hair. So I used to never wear any sort of extensions or anything because, I had the long, natural, curly hair. It was always long from the time I was a child. It was very easy for me to grow it to like bra strap length, mid back length, waist length, or whatever. And so I got told by a lot of older women in my family that, like, I have quote unquote good hair or that, I have very pretty hair. And a lot of men would also compliment my hair all the time. They would compliment its texture, its length, its color. And so I had a complex about my hair. So when weaves and wigs and all of that stuff became really popular, and I saw all of these influencers like switching up their looks every day and looking really cute and getting praise for it, I was actually afraid of wearing a wig in particular because the wig is not my real hair, and I feel like wigs look a little bit more obvious. Like if you get close to the person's scalp, you could see that they're wearing a wig. So I used to be insecure because I got praised by men who pedestalized long, natural, curly hair. Or even by the women around me, they would say, like, oh, the boys are going to love you when you're older. Or, whatever guy gets with you, he's going to be lucky because you have that long, silky hair. Like, you have long, pretty hair. And people would make it a very big deal or whatever. So it actually caused me to have this micro insecurity about wearing fake hair because I associated wearing fake hair with being basic and being regular because men who were misogynists, they would call out women for wearing fake hair and being basic. They would say things like, well, nowadays they're saying, oh, well, you're a 6 or you're an adjustable 6 because if you take off that weave or if you take off the makeup, then you're not as pretty as how you look now. And so I had that internalized misogynistic standpoint of, being kind of like waking up like this or waking up looking perfect is better and it's considered prettier. And once again, my beauty standards were obviously based on the male gaze. And so in my mind, like when I was younger and single, because I thought that like a man would want me more or I'd be more desirable to men with my natural long hair versus with fake long hair, even if it was a protective style, I didn't wear my hair in any sort of extensions or wigs or anything because I was afraid of men's opinions kind of like me going down or like not being on a pedestal in the eyes of men. So, I guess my question to you guys watching this is which male gaze do you pedestalize? Do you pedestalize the black male gaze? For example, like a lot of the women that say, oh, these men are colorists and, these men, they only want mixed race women or light skinned women. I notice the women who say that, they tend to pedestalize wealthy black men, men like NFL players, NBA players or whatever. And I've noticed that some women pedestalize the white male gaze. Other women pedestalize a rich man's gaze. Some women pedestalize a Christian man's gaze. Other women pedestalize the red pill male gaze. I think about those women content creators who make stuff in the red pill space. All of these things that women are doing oftentimes can be rooted in the male gaze. And I think that this is because a lot of times people equate your value as a woman to how you're viewed in the eyes of men. And I've noticed that some people, they equate your value as a woman in terms of, okay, Does a rich man want you? Because if so, then you're prettier than the woman who she can only get a quote unquote dusty. I've noticed that women do stuff like that, but they're still centering men because now instead of centering dusty men, you're centering rich men. So you're saying that XYZ girl is prettier than this other girl because she married a guy who's a millionaire, or she has a boyfriend who's a millionaire versus these other girls who their boyfriends only make 50,000 a year. So you are still creating a beauty hierarchy based on your proximity to men and based on the status of the men that you can attract sexually. So that is still a very male-centered perspective. Why can't women just be valued for simply existing? Why can't we be valued as human beings as opposed to our whole entire value is based on, okay, which men find us beautiful, and are those men the richest men possible? Are they the most attractive men possible that find us beautiful? We're kind of doing the same thing that we see a lot of people do to men, which is men are defined based on how pretty their woman is. I've noticed we will define women based on how rich their boyfriend is or based on how handsome her boyfriend is. So that's still being male centered. But in terms of insecurities, another insecurity that I used to have that went away once I decentered men was I used to be a little bit more anxious around men because you know how, like, let's say you text a guy or something and like you're kind of analyzing what he says, or you really want XYZ wealthy guy to ask you on a date. You're going out and you're freestyling and you're trying to get attention. You dressed up, you did all your hair and makeup, and you wore these clothes that show your cleavage or whatever because you're hoping that this guy will ask you out. You're hoping to snag a quote unquote high value man, whatever that means. Notice how a lot of women talk about high value men, but they never point fingers and name names. They never actually show an example of who this ethereal high value man is. They never show you who, like, examples of who it is. I've noticed that they will name high value women or women that they aspire to be like Lori Harvey. But personally, I don't want to date Future. I don't view Future as the type of guy that I would want to date. I don't date guys like Damson Idris or, these unambiguous actors and stuff. That's not my personal like type or preference. So, but once again, we are valuing women based on, oh, okay, well, she can attract actors and stuff. Okay, so then that means like she's doing better than the girls who are not famous, who like they only attract guys who are not famous. Like they're not as high up on the beauty scale as these influencers and stuff who are dating NFL players. So those people who make comments like that, they're pedestalizing a famous male gaze. They want a famous guy. They want the Chris Browns. They want the rock star guys. They want the Leonardo DiCaprios. They want the Diddy's. But when I was more male centered, I used to be a little bit more anxious because I would naturally kind of analyze men's reactions to me, like, oh, okay, did this guy look over at me? Or like, was he giving me the look? Or was he staring at me from across the bar? And all of those thoughts that I used to have, they used to lead to a slight anxiety. So like whenever I would go into a social setting where there are a lot of men there, I would naturally kind of feel uncomfortable because I would be kind of internally assessing my beauty or assessing my physical looks. Whether it was in comparison to the other women in the room or in comparison to, what are these guys looking at? Like, what are they looking for? And for me in particular, my male gaze, it was more centered around, or like the way that I centered the male gaze, I centered more of the rich male gaze or kind of like the educated, quote unquote, classy male gaze. I didn't care about the NFL players. I cared more about the politician types, kind of like the high level organizational leaders and, the guys that own nonprofits and those types of guys. But that is still being male centered. And so I noticed that once I stopped doing that, like once I completely stopped giving an F, all of that anxiety that I used to have when I would walk into a fancy restaurant or a fancy bar, or when I would go to some sort of luncheon at work and there are lots of high level accounting guys there and stuff, all of that anxiety that I used to have, it totally went away because I was no longer assessing my success or failure based on whether or not I could attract the attention of some random accountant at a luncheon. And it also helped me to be able to socialize with guys in a way that wasn't like awkward. So you know how sometimes as a girl, like let's say there's a guy and he's like really hot and he's also wealthy and you kind of want to impress him. Let's say you have a particular type. Let's say you wanted a white guy who's wealthy and hot or whatever. So let's say you go somewhere and there's this hot, wealthy white guy and then like you're attracted to him and you want him to be attracted to you. And so it kind of naturally heightens your adrenaline. It kind of naturally heightens the whole experience for you. You may be a little bit short of breath. Your heart might be pounding a little bit more than normal. You may feel a little bit hyper aware of that pimple on your face, or, your wig is sliding, or your extensions are not blending perfectly. Those were all the types of thoughts that I used to have when I used to be more male centered. And that was because deep down inside, I wanted to be picked. So I was still having pick me behaviors, but it was more of like these internalized pick me thoughts. That's why I call it a micro insecurity. So it was something that was very small that I couldn't quite articulate, but it was a feeling that went away once I truly decentered men. So for example, and that's how I actually know that I decentered men, because once I got around those guys, those same types of guys after decentering men, I was able to walk up and talk to them normally. I didn't care about following all of these social rules. You know how some people are like, oh, you have to prove that you're wifey material. Oh, you have to wait XYZ amount of time before you text back. Oh, you have to follow all of these social norms and stuff to try to snag this guy. I didn't care about that anymore. So I didn't have to follow those rules. So pretty much 99.9% of my anxieties and insecurities around guys actually went away, because I was no longer hyper aware of, oh my God, can he see that my extensions are like poking out of my hair? Oh my God, can he see my tracks? Oh, I wonder if he notices this pimple on my face. Oh my gosh, does my breath smell bad? Oh, this is so embarrassing. Oh, I can't eat in front of him because he's going to think I'm gross. Oh my gosh, I forgot to shave a certain part of my leg and now that's super embarrassing. Oh, my foundation is melting. Oh, my skin looks a little bit oily right now. He's probably noticing how shiny my forehead is right now. Those are all the types of thoughts that I used to have when I centered the male gaze, or at least when I centered kind of the wealthy, classy male gaze. I used to think all of those thoughts. But once I truly stopped defining my own self-worth and happiness around whether or not one of these Barack Obama types of men picked me, that was when I was able to just enjoy my own company and just not care about what any of those guys thought of me. So one thing that I was able to start doing was I started being able to experiment with different hair extensions and clothes and makeup that I liked, not makeup that Barack Obama types of men liked. Because before I used to dress very elegant, which was still cute. Like I love the elegant look and I love like the classy, the pearl earrings and all that. Like that is so cute. I still love those outfits. But there were times where I wanted to be more dressed down. And yes, to some people, it might be considered ratchet to like want to wear leggings sometimes, or maybe some hoop earrings sometimes, and maybe even a red lipstick to go with the hoop earrings or whatever. So I know that that doesn't necessarily fit like this Barack Obama aesthetic, but there were times when I wanted to look like that, but I never did, because I was like, okay, these Barack Obama types of guys, they are going to assume that I'm like being a thought, or that I'm like not very classy and educated because I'm dressed like that. So that was still me centering the male gaze. But once I stopped caring, I was able to fully express myself in the way that I saw fit. So I could wear whatever I wanted and nobody cared. Like I didn't care what the guys thought of me. I could wear as much makeup or as little makeup as I wanted. And I wasn't thinking about, oh my God, this guy is going to see me. Like, what if he thinks my lipstick is too bright? What if he thinks I'm wearing too much makeup? Guys don't really like a lot of makeup. They only want a girl who's like a natural beauty. I have to show him that I'm like wifey material and not just like one night stand material. And girls who are more wifey material, they tend to have more natural makeup. Whereas the girls that are seen more as hoes, they tend to wear more makeup. So I can't wear lashes because, that's like trying to draw too much attention to myself. All of that is internalized misogyny, because only misogynistic types of guys make those comments and those judgments. Like anyone who is genuinely judging someone that harshly based off of something like eyelashes or something like makeup, anyone who does that is purely ignorant. But that was one of the insecurities that went away once I decentered men. It was the insecurities, the micro insecurities about how I looked and, not feeling like I looked super classy and super elegant, kind of like a Michelle Obama type 24/7. That was a micro insecurity that went away. Another micro insecurity that dissolved once I decentered men was the insecurity around being viewed as a thought or being viewed as a hoe. So, for example, when I was in college and stuff, and when I was in my early 20s, I purposely did not want to be seen. I didn't want to really like go out and stuff and, like dance in front of people because I felt like, oh no, that's definitely going to come off as like being a thought. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm over here just twerking on tables randomly or anything, but I now am able to have fun freely in a way that I feel comfortable with, and I don't have to worry about following social norms. So, for example, I laugh as loud as I want to laugh. I tell whatever jokes I want to tell. Sometimes I curse. Like, I used to not curse at all. And I especially wouldn't curse around guys because I viewed it as, oh no, the guy is going to think that you're not classy. And, if you are a classy woman, then you do not curse whatsoever. And, you have to use all of this proper language around a man because you want him to think of you as wifey material. So once again, I was still centering men's opinions and kind of shaping my personality and shaping my vernacular around men's opinions. So one of the insecurities that went away once I decentered men was I stopped caring about my language and stuff. So yes, if I wanted to say fuck, then I would say fuck. If I wanted to say a curse word, then I would say a curse word. If I wanted to hang out with my friends and like be silly and goofy and post on Snapchat or whatever, then I could. And I didn't care about guys and like what they would think of me or, oh, this guy's not going to want to date me now because he's going to stereotype me as being immature. I no longer was trying to censor my behavior or trying to like dumb myself down or downplay my fun so that I can impress some guy or so that I could snag the male gaze. Another insecurity that went away once I decentered men was the insecurities that come with being single or the insecurities that come with just not being with anyone for a long time and people thinking like, oh, are you a hoe or she can't keep a man or that sort of thing. I've noticed that I only cared about that when I was more male-centered because I cared about men's opinions on me being single. I was like, oh, well, what are guys going to think? Like, what is a new potential suitor going to think of me being single? Or what is a new potential suitor going to think of me like, dancing in a crop top? Is he going to think that I'm a thought? So once again, here I was centering my entire wardrobe, centering my makeup, centering my hairstyles and hair choices all around the male gaze and around what some invisible man is going to think. Have you ever noticed how you will be planning your entire wardrobe based on what a man thinks and you haven't even met that man yet? You're literally living your life based on some ghost of a man who you may or may not ever even come across. And based on statistics and based on sociology, unfortunately, a lot of women will never come across whatever guys they're looking for. These Prince Charming, ethereal, high-value men who are just perfect protectors and providers and they're emotionally available and they've been to therapy and all of this other stuff. Statistically speaking, most women will never even meet that or they will never have that long term. So the fact that we are over here like literally not wearing what we want to wear, not doing what we want to do, not wearing certain makeup, not wearing extensions, not wearing acrylic nails or whatever it is, we're doing all that for a guy who may or may not even exist. And that was something that was so eye-opening to me, was realizing that I was essentially worshiping a god because the whole concept of God is like you believe in someone or you believe in a being that you have not yet met or you haven't seen with your physical eyes. So it's almost like we are worshiping men as gods because we will be behaving as if this invisible man who we haven't even met, who we may or may not ever meet, we're behaving as if he exists and he's watching over us or he could somehow sense that, we are looking trashy and then he's going to reject us and it's going to be a punishment because now you're going to be lonely and you're never going to have as happy of a life as you wanted to have because you didn't snag XYZ high value man. We've literally been raised in a society where men are put on almost like this godlike pedestal. So I will say though, I do think that men have actually because they weren't very smart. I do think a lot of men have placed sex on such a high pedestal to the point where now, women, they've kind of like almost reversed it in some instances, depending on the type of woman you are. But yeah, that whole desire of like trying to be seen as being worthy or trying to be seen as being picked, that insecurity went away once I decentered men. Another insecurity that went away once I decentered men was constantly analyzing a man's intentions with me. So I used to be the type of girl that was like, when a guy would become friends with me, no matter who the guy was, whether I liked him or didn't, I would automatically start thinking and poring over his intentions, kind of poring over in my mind the things that he said or how he looks at me or how he interacts with me to see what does he think of me? Like, is he trying to date me? Is he trying to just sleep with me? Am I giving him any signals that I shouldn't be giving him? Like, how can I manage my own behavior so that he does not cross any boundaries with me? That is something that I stopped doing once I decentered men because I no longer give a fuck about what random guys want. Because if a guy tries to make a pass at me, I can instantly and harshly reject him if necessary. I can cut a guy off. Like, I'm very quick. I'm much quicker to cut a guy off now than I was when I was in my teens and early 20s. In my teens and early 20s, when I was more male-centered, I had more of a fear of being alone, whereas that fear is completely gone now because ever since I started studying deeply into psychology and sociology, we already know that most women will die alone, whether you are married or unmarried. Most men will, statistically speaking, leave you when you are on your deathbed. Statistically speaking, more men suffer from narcissistic personality disorder than women. Over 3/4 of the patients in therapy are women on average, as opposed to men. So there are so many men walking around this earth with multiple undiagnosed mental illnesses because they don't even care about therapy or anything like that, or about paying the money because, most guys are either broke or if they have money, most of them are pretty cheap. So why would they spend hundreds of dollars just to get diagnosed with something so that they have to spend hundreds more dollars on, getting monthly therapy sessions to try to overcome it, and then spend hundreds more dollars going to a pharmacy to get medicine and stuff? Most guys aren't going to do that. Just point blank period, no matter how much money he has, most men are not even going to do that. So that actually helped me to decenter men because I realized that, number one, men and women do not tend to think the same way. They haven't been socialized the same way. And oftentimes, all of these emotions and stuff that you were projecting onto a man aren't even there. So, you know how women naturally kind of fantasize about their boyfriends and stuff when he's not there? They're thinking, oh, Johnny is so cute. Oh, that was so adorable how he blinked his eyes earlier. Oh my God, his shirt he was wearing was so adorable. He's such a sweetheart. A lot of women will be thinking thoughts about the guy like that. And then the guy will be thinking, okay, so I said the right thing to her. So when is she going to sleep with me? All right, so now I can hopefully get her to be my wife and go 50-50 with me so that she can build my wealth and then I'll be able to retire early. Score. So one of the insecurities that went away once I decentered men was the insecurity of, is he going to keep me around or is he going to stay with me? I no longer fight for relationships like how I used to when I was more male-centered, because when I was male-centered, I always imagined my future with a man. I always imagined my happiness with a man being there. I always imagined my biggest accomplishments in life with a man being there. I always imagined seeking these accomplishments so that I could be high enough in social status to attract a man of a higher social status. So that was still very male-centered, but now those insecurities and those thoughts are gone. Now I seek a higher social status simply for myself and for the benefits that it can get for me and maybe for the people that I love and care about, like my parents, my siblings, and people like that. I genuinely am doing things that I am passionate about because there were literally some passions that I didn't pursue back when I was more male-centered because I did not want to potentially offend a quote unquote high value man. I didn't want to offend a potential suitor. So, for example, I love photography and I love videography. So, if I love photography, that means that I'm going to be taking a lot of photos, including photos of myself, and posting them on Instagram. Now, I'm not saying that I'm like posting naked pics on Instagram or anything, but I do like to post different selfies and kind of like play with the lighting and all that. And I do enjoy when people interact with my photos and they say like, wow, that was a good angle, or I like how you edited this, I like how you did the lighting. But I noticed that a lot of guys get jealous of that or they don't like that. So in the past, I literally used to not do some of my hobbies and passions. I also love fashion. So I used to not wear certain fashions or like, not post myself in bikinis, not even be interested in bikinis like that, because a lot of guys view it as, oh, if she's trying to walk around in a bikini or be seen in a bikini, she's being a thought. She is being a modern woman seeking after male validation. So I used to literally shut the door on some of my passions and shut the door on certain opportunities because I was afraid of how I would be viewed in the eyes of the male gaze. But now those insecurities that I used to have completely dissolved. I can truly say that since being in a more decentered state, about 90% of the insecurities I have are pretty much gone. Also, the conflicts that I used to have with women back when I was like in my pick me days, I used to have like kind of a mistrust of certain women. If they came off as like being sexually confident or like sexual in any way, then I would naturally not trust those women, or I would assume like, oh, she's trying to be a hoe. She's trying to sleep with every guy. She's trying to do XYZ with all these different dudes because she's very insecure. I used to pass a lot of judgment on other women who led different lifestyles than me. And that was because I was more male centered. So I would listen to men's opinions on those types of women. And I would take on men's opinions simply because they were men, not because I genuinely cared about asking that girl what she was doing and why she was doing the things she was doing. I would literally just be like, okay, men judge her this way. Okay, so I'm going to judge her this way. Men call her a hoe. Okay, and then I call her a hoe. She must be a hoe then because men are calling her that. So my conflicts that I have with women have largely declined now because I don't center male opinions anymore. So if a girl is like a hoe or a thought, or if men call her that, I don't judge that woman anymore like I used to. I don't purposely like judge a woman based on what other guys think of her anymore like how I used to. So this has actually helped me to develop a lot more healthy female friendships, because I now prioritize female friendships, first of all, because I'm not spending all my time and energy in finding a relationship. So that's another insecurity that went away, was like, oh, if I don't invest XYZ amount of hours per week into constantly trying to find a guy, talk to a guy, get to know a guy, get seen by a guy, get attention from a guy, if I don't spend the majority of my free time doing that, then I'm just going to be alone and I'm going to be missing out. I no longer have that FOMO. I don't have that micro insecurity that I used to have. So I now prioritize doing what I love to do, doing the passions that I want to do, making the friendships that I want to create, because I understand that statistically speaking, female friendships are going to last longer than a lot of relationships you have with men. Not only do about 50% of marriages end in divorce, but if you are not married, around 70% of relationships where you're unmarried end in a breakup. So there's a 70% chance that whoever you're dating right now, or whatever guy becomes your boyfriend, there's a 70% chance that he won't even be there in your life 10 years from now. But a lot of women, like let's say you make really good female friends, a lot of times those female friends may still be around and they tend to last longer on average than your relationships with men. Remember, all it takes on average is just a few pounds for your whole entire relationship to go downhill. All it takes is a few pounds for a man to suddenly start looking at other women, wanting other women, being tempted to cheat more than normal. So it's like, really? If all it takes is a few pounds for this to be over, female friendships don't end based on you gaining a couple of pounds. But yeah, that's a micro insecurity that I no longer have. Like, oh, I have to try to keep these guys. I have to try to keep a guy in my life or try to keep a guy's attention, because if I don't, then I'm going to be missing out on something. No, I genuinely don't feel like I'm missing out on anything anymore. In fact, I felt like I was missing out on more when I was constantly chasing male validation as opposed to doing what lights me up. You know how a lot of women will say things like, I don't know who I am. I don't know like what my purpose is in life. I don't know what my passions are in life. I wonder if those women are male centered. And maybe that's why they don't know what their passions are. Because instead of spending all of their free time in self discovery, maybe they're spending all their free time trying to get a guy's attention or arguing with their boyfriend or trying to turn a friends with benefits into a long-term relationship. Or maybe they're spending all of their energy trying to fix their marriage, trying to fix their relationships. I used to be this type of person. I would literally be spending money on trying to go to relationship therapy. I would be spending money trying to buy books for my significant other to try to help him to like understand his own mind and understand himself. Meanwhile, I should have been reading books to help me understand myself. I should have been investing in my mental and spiritual health. So that's another like thing that I no longer do. I no longer care. It's like, look, a lot of men, they don't even care about their own mental and physical well-being. So I'm not going to spend the rest of my life managing a man's mental and physical health. I need to spend all of my time, energy, and attention nurturing and managing my own physical and mental health. Anyway, those are just a few of the micro insecurities that I had that I feel have started to greatly fall off ever since I went down this whole decentering men rabbit hole. What do you ladies think? Have you had more confidence since you stopped centering the male gaze? Has it helped you in dating if you are still dating men from a decentered way or a decentered perspective? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.